Hello, welcome to this video lesson. This time we're looking at Wilfred Owen's poem Exposure. This can be found on the AQA and edXL conflict anthology sections. Okay, and this is an analysis of the poem. Look at some of my other videos for how to incorporate this poem into an exam question that might turn up. Okay, well, let's crack on. Right, so a couple of questions to myself. What's the poem about? Well, the poem focuses on the misery felt by the soldiers overnight in World War I. Although there is no fighting, there is still danger to be found in the extreme weather conditions. Hence the title, Exposure. You're exposed to the elements. The title relates directly to the harsh weather conditions the soldiers are exposed to overnight in the trenches. Themes, effects and realities of war, nature, suffering, loss, fear, boredom, and hopelessness. Okay, and as with all my videos, do pause and jot down notes as and when you see fit. Also, if your membership allows, do print off the PDF, and you can use the PDF alongside the actual video, and you can highlight and annotate as you go. Brief context behind the poem. Although 6 marks in the AQA question go towards context, you don't need to explicitly talk about context. The examiners state that, just answering the question fully will automatically mean you're ticking the context box. But it's important to note here that Owen wrote this poem in 1917, not long before he was killed in battle. He was obviously in the trenches himself. His poems often reflect his anger at the war's waste of life and the horrendous conditions suffered by the soldiers. Form and structure. Now, I'm going to go through an analysis of the poem in a minute. I'm just breaking down the key areas that you'll need to focus on in any exam answer. Form and structure is first and front with those. The poem consists of 8 identical 5-line stanzas that follow an A, B, B, A, C rhyme scheme and end with a 5th half line. This reflects the monotonous nature of the men's experiences. Now, it's important that I state at this point, a recent examiner's feedback session I was on, method and meaning. That was the message sent home to us. Method and meaning. So the method is the technique. So here we've got identifying the rhyme scheme, and all stanzas end with a 5th half line. That's the method. What's the meaning of that? Well, this reflects the monotonous nature of the men's experiences. So you must, it's good to identify a technique, but that's not enough. That'll get you the lower levels, the lower grades. But to get the higher grades, to catapult yourself into the top band, you need to talk about the meaning, the effect of these methods. What was the poet's intention behind using them, and so on. So this reflects the monotonous nature of the men's experiences. However, the rhyme scheme often contains half rhymes, which unsettles the reader and offers no comfort, like the reality of the situation of the soldiers. The last half line of each stanza is often a rhetorical question, or the repeated phrase, "but nothing happens," which emphasises the pointlessness Owens feels about the whole situation. The poem is written in the present tense, using the first person plural to reflect how this experience is being shared by all the soldiers across the war. Okay, so method and meaning. The structure, nothing really develops throughout the poem, with the same line being used in the last stanza as the first. So there's your method, the structure of the poem. It remains pretty consistent throughout. Well, what's the effect of that? What's the meaning behind that? And again, this reflects the monotonous nature of the men's experience and the war itself, the broader war. It's like it's just relentless. It's the same thing night after night. The bombing, the shelling, the noises, the conditions, the damp, the cold, the weather, the rats, the hunger. Okay, it's that relentless nature. Language and imagery. So the use of repetition throughout serves to convey the horror and despair of the men in the trenches. Method and meaning. Method, repetition, meaning, convey the horror and despair. So look back at what words have been repeated. Bleak imagery is used to remind the reader of the men's pain. The weather is personified to heighten the danger, making it seem like the real enemy in the war. The repeated use of rhetorical questions serves to reinforce Owen's stance that the war is never worth the huge suffering and loss of life. Alliteration and assonance is used in conjunction to emphasise these conditions. Okay. So I'm going to go through the poem stanza by stanza and annotate it. But before I do, on the side there I've written, the poem consists of 8 identical 5-line stanzas that follow an A, B, B, A, C rhyme scheme and end with the 5th half line, which could reflect the monotonous nature of the men's experiences. So I'm not going to write that on every screen, but that's there for you to observe now. Again, if you've got access to the PDF, do print this part off, or access to a copy of the poem, get it from wherever you download it and print it off the internet, no problem, or even in your anthology from school. And you can add notes to the notes I'm sure you've already taken. Okay, so I'll put up all the annotations and I'll go through them, and let's see if I can judge it and not go on to the next screen. I think that's the last one. Okay, we shall see. Okay, our brains ache. So our, collective pronoun there, a shared painful experience. Our brains ache in the merciless iced east winds that knife us. Okay, sibilance, merciless iced east. Sibilance is the repeated S or SH sound. And personification of nature, which appears to be attacking them. So it's, presenting nature as a malevolent force out to do damage. Merciless, there's no comfort. East winds that knife us. When we've all probably been outside in the freezing cold weather over winter, and very grateful to get back into the warmth of, I don't know, our homes or the shops or wherever it is we are. But these poor guys, they didn't have that comfort at all. It was relentless. Look at the ellipses at the end of each of these lines. So there's your method, the ellipses. What's that implying? Well, that they're waiting for something. It's not over. What are they waiting for? Well, they're in the front lines. They're in the trenches in World War I. So they're waiting to be attacked, or they're waiting to just suffer continuously, endlessly. Wearied, we keep awake because the night is silent. Low, drooping flares confuse our memory of the salient. Worried by silence, sentries whisper, curious, nervous, but nothing happens. So many emotions, a list there, adding to the anxiety, more sibilants to emphasize this. But nothing happens. Short, simple, half-line sentence, emphasizing their boredom and tension. And also, because it's a half-line, it's emphasized, so it accentuates Owen's message. Watching, we hear the mad gust tugging on the wire, like twitching agonies of men among its brambles. That's a simile, like twitching agonies. A reminder that nature causes plenty of suffering, not just bullets. Northward, incessantly, that means endlessly, the flickering gunnery rumbles, far off like a dull rumour of some other war. What are we doing here? It's a rhetorical question, half-line, fifth line, half-line, rhetorical question this time. Asks what the point of it all is. The poignant misery of dawn begins to grow. I mean, a new day, you might think new beginning, but no, it's just going to bring the same relentless tension and anxiety and pain and suffering. We only know war lasts. Rain soaks and clouds sag stormy. So, what's the point of war? Well, we don't know. But we do know is the misery it brings. That it lasts, it doesn't end. That rain makes you wet, and that clouds produce this rain. Dawn massing in the east, her melancholy army, personification. Dawn is personified. Usually brings hope, new day, but not here. Melancholy army attacks once more in ranks on shivering ranks of grey. So repetition of ranks, it's like relentless and vast. Melancholy army, enjambment there, run on lines, so it's continuous, it's relentless. And then there's the end stop with grey, but nothing happens. Half line again, repetition of the end of the first stanza. Moving on, let me see if I can remember this one. Let me see where to stop it. I think that's it. We shall see. Okay, sudden successive flights of bullets streak the silence. Repeated SH sounds, so sibilants. It could reflect the sound of the flying bullets. Remember, method and meaning. Method, the technique, sibilants. Meaning, the effect, sound of flying bullets. Vivid imagery, puts us, the reader, straight right in the middle of the action there. Less deadly than the air that shudders black with snow. So the bullets are less deadly than the weather. So juxtaposing the purity of white snow with idea of darkness and evil. with sidelong flowing flakes that flock, pause and renew. Okay, we've got alliteration there, highlighting the relentless nature of falling snow. Might be beautiful to us, but if you're stuck out in it and you're freezing cold and you've got insufficient clothing and you're worried about dying any second, it's not quite that pleasant, calm, serene picture we associate ourselves maybe at Christmas time with snow. Nature battling against the soldiers, so not just the enemy, not just the Germans, but nature's the enemy, and a bigger enemy, it would appear. We watch them wandering up and down the wind's nonchalance, but nothing happens. Repetition of that last line again. That's the third time of 4 stanzas. Pale flakes with fingering stealth come feeling for our faces. So personifying the snow, reflecting the harsh conditions. Maybe the knives referenced in the first line. We've got the effect of the snowflakes on the skin, the face. We cringe in holes, back on forgotten dreams, and stare snow-dazed deep into grassier ditches. So maybe failing to think of a different life, a previous life. So we drowse, sun-dozed, littered with blossoms trickling where the blackbird fusses. Is it that we are dying? Second rhetorical question, possibly answering the first one. Slowly our ghosts drag home, glimpsing the sunk fires. So again, looking back to the life they've left behind. Glozed with rusted, dark red jewels, crickets jingle there. For hours the innocent mice rejoice. The house is theirs. Shutters and doors all closed. On us the doors are closed. We turn back to our dying. So that's Sasora in this stanza. Sasora, any form of punctuation in the middle of a line. And we've got a colon, a semicolon, another colon, and another colon. It reflects how the men feel shut out of their own homes from back home. Their memories are possibly fading in the minds of those back home as well. And we turn back to our dying. So the harsh reality of their existing current conditions are too big, too pronounced to ignore. And the final 2 stanzas, and I can't remember, let's see, I think one more. There we go. Right. Since we believe not otherwise can kind fires burn, so implies soldiers believe they are sacrificing themselves to ensure the quality of life back home remains as they remember it. Now ever suns smile true on child or field or fruit, for God's invincible spring our love is made afraid. Therefore, not loath, we lie out here, therefore we're born, for love of God seems dying. Is it their love or belief in God that's dying, or are they feeling that God has deserted them? Such are the harsh conditions in which they exist, where nature is as brutal as the actual war itself. Tonight, his frost, capitalized frost, will fasten on this mud and us, shrivelling many hands, puckering foreheads crisp, the burying party, picks and shovels in their shaking grasp. Vivid picture of the impact of the cold, shrivelling, puckering, burying, picks and shovels in their shaking grasp. Pause over half-known faces. All their eyes are ice, but nothing happens. Metaphor which could imply that living men are no longer to feel any emotion. Eyes are ice, no warmth in their eyes. Life has gone out. But nothing happens. It ends the same way as the first stanza and another third one, I think, suggesting even their deaths don't change. The cycle continues. So that when talks about the structure and the ideas developing throughout the poem, well, they don't develop. They pretty much conclude as they started. Nothing happens. The relentless nature of war, the relentless nature of the harsh conditions under which these poor soldiers had to survive, live. Okay, final screen. Just a summary of the main poetic devices used. So in your analysis, you could incorporate these. These are the methods. Remember, we've talked about the meaning quite a bit. Rhyme scheme, present tense, first person, plural, half rhymes, half lines, rhetorical questions, repetition, alliteration, assonance, personification, pathetic fallacy, obviously the weather, bleak imagery. Rewatch the video to see where I've incorporated all of those. Useful vocab to use when analysing. So to improve the sophistication of your analysis. Suffering, despair, futility, monotonous, hopelessness, death, contemplate, boredom, sacrifices, relentlessness. There are plenty others you can use, but I've just highlighted a few. And then links to other poems. If you're coming to me from the AQA syllabus, well, Realities of War in Bayonet Charge and Charge of the Light Brigade, or The Lack of Hope in London and Power of Nature in Storm on the Island are a few. If you're here from EdXL, well, Reality of Conflict in Belfast Confetti, or Themes of Loss and Suffering in What Were They Like. Okay, guys, hope that's been useful to you. Do watch it again, and do obviously check in with all the other videos on the site. Lovely. Cheers now. Bye.